Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias and welcome to Urban Update. I am Alberto Vasallo. And on the show this morning, all the details about the upcoming Red Ribbon Gala and Scholarships Award, hosted by the Greater Boston Sickle Cell Disease Association. That's in a little while. We'll also talk to the president of the National Braille Press, who recently announced the winner of a $20,000 award to the developer of a groundbreaking educational software for the blind and visually impaired. But up first, Evan Falchuk, the attorney and health industry executive who ran for governor of Massachusetts in 2014 under his new political party, back then the United Independent Party. Now, if you recall, Evan was able to win over 3% of the votes, more than 70,000 votes, by the way, which incidentally was greater than the gap between the eventual winner, Charlie Baker, and Democratic nominee Martha Coakley. So he played an important role. Now, last week, he made political headlines again by enrolling in, get this, the Democratic Party, claiming he is now opting to join a more coordinated effort to combat President Donald Trump's agenda. Now, the Independent Party did fall a bit short of the needed registered voters to maintain official party status. So Falchuk's integration in the Democratic Party has added much political fodder for the pundits. To give us his view, Evan has accepted our invitation to join us this morning, and we have him back in studio. Welcome to Urban Update again.
Hey, Alberto. Glad to be here.
Good. I'm glad to know what is going on because when we did, you had been on here before, very enthusiastic about the United Independent Party. I think I even, full disclosure, I think I might have even registered.
Thank you.
So what is the current status of it now? And it's kind of give it all a closure, right? An ending to it?
Yeah, under the rules, you have to get at least 1% of voters in Massachusetts enrolled in the party. We got really close. We made it to about 0.75%. It's not enough. It's over 30,000 people, but it's not enough. So it went back to being what's called a political designation. So everything that I got into this process to do, which is to help get new people involved, to have our political process be based on what's the right thing to do instead of kind of crazy political games, is what I still believe in. And I joined the Democratic Party to help bring that about.
All right, so before we get into that, I kind of want to see what did you learn? I imagine that when you started to when you finished, you learned a lot about Bay State voters, about politics in general, and just kind of what the country or the state needs, right?
Yeah, I think voters today feel like no one's listening to them. They feel like the system is set up in a way that allows for people that are connected and have money to make an impact, and for regular people not to be able to get by. And I think that's why we saw in this last election that Trump was able to be successful, and also we saw people like Bernie Sanders were able to be successful. They spoke to that. Now, Trump represents something malicious. I think he's up to some pretty dangerous things for our democracy.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, well, it's reality, and it's part of the reason I joined the Democratic Party, is that in this crisis that we're in right now, we've got to pick sides. We've got to decide, are we going to be with Trump and the undermining of our democratic process, or are we going to be looking for an alternative? And part of what I'm telling the Democratic Party, and I really feel strongly about this, is that it has to be much more than just Trump is bad. There has to be an alternative vision. We have to be able to talk about a new deal for the 21st century, a way to make sure that working people and working families are able to get by. If we don't have that, we have a Republican Party that seems to be against equal rights, against so much of the progress that's happened the last 100 years. If we don't have a party that stands for those things, we're gonna lose out.
It sounds to me like you're joining, but you're joining to change things up, to mix things up. Like I don't think you're joining just to be part of the group. I think you're joining to change. And what would some of those changes look like under your, kind of what you're looking at for the Democratic Party?
It's the same things I've always talked about. We need contested elections. We need new people to get involved in our system. We need to also have a platform as a party that articulates the vision that I just talked about. So if part of the problem is that the American dream is getting gobbled up by the rising cost of living, then the Democratic Party has to stand for the kinds of policies that will address those issues. Could be job training, lots of infrastructure spending, education, help to people with health care, not what we're seeing in Washington these days, but something much more bold and ambitious that is building for a 22nd century economy.
Now, and again, I know you mentioned it, but why not the Republican Party? Why didn't you opt to go the other way and say, well, they made a, this was their candidate. Can I go over there and change, kind of the metrics over there? Because a lot of people have been talking about, having a more moderate Republican Party is the future of that party as well.
Yeah, it could have been the future of the Republican Party, but they've gone down a really dark path. I mean, the Republican Party, make no mistake, is now a party of white nationalism in the United States. It's a party that's against immigration. It's a party that does not believe in equal rights. It's a party that believes in, as we're seeing from the policymaking happening in Washington, more money to the connected elite and not for regular working people. So that's what they've chosen to be. The question is for Americans, most of whom don't agree with that, most of whom don't want to be living in a country that looks like what the Republicans want. What do we do? What do we do? The Democratic Party is the only organization strong enough to push back against that. But again, only if it articulates a viable vision for the future.
I want to kind of go back to this because it sounds like almost what prompted you to start the United Independent Party. But I think now you have kind of a you're in a crisis mode, right? Because this was the same situation we talked about years ago, that neither party was really hitting on all strides to what people wanted. So there was an opportunity for a third party. But you look at it now as you've got to do something now.
It's changed. I mean, Donald Trump represents a real crisis in our democracy. It really is. It isn't the kind of thing where we can say, look, I did an interview recently where I was on with Ralph Nader, third party organizer.
I heard that.
And I said to him, you got to join the Democratic Party. And he said, well, third parties can be good because over years we can start to have an impact on policy. And my comment to him was, we don't have years. We're in a crisis today. We have to organize today. We've got to get people to vote. We've got to get people to run for office. We need to bring about that kind of a change that represents a better future than the very, very dark one that our leaders have planned for us.
Okay, so now, I did hear that interview, and I know one of the things you guys talked about, and I think you both agreed, that it's easier said than done because you've got this old guard, even within the Democratic Party, that I think you both can say they don't get it just yet, right? And they're not going to give up power right away. And it's this old guard that really is set in their ways.
It's part of the problem. I think Democrats have to stand for the future, stand for a vision that's bold, again, a new deal for the 21st century. If there are Democratic leaders that don't want to stand for that and want to play the same old politics or be complacent about where they stand and about the challenges we face in our country, they should be challenged. And the Democratic Party should support new, smart, thoughtful, energetic, engaged people to get involved in our system.
Evan, what happened? I mean, I know people have analyzed, and I want to get your take on it because we've talked about it before. So when Obama beat Romney, there was this talk that the Republican Party needed to be friendlier to Latinos, blacks, and all these other groups, that they were falling out of touch with the demographic change in the United States. And it seemed like they've gone in a completely different direction. So what's happened, and what do you see happening in the future? Because this country is getting even more and more diverse every year, every moment.
Yeah, and there's Democrats who will say, look, demographics are on our side. The country is changing, and this will be an episode that passes in our history. I don't think we can afford to be so complacent. I think we've got to reach out to and connect with people and not say, listen, because you belong to a particular ethnic or racial or religious group, you're going to vote for our party, even if we don't stand for anything that you particularly care about. That isn't visionary. That isn't what America is supposed to be about. Believe me, there are so many people across Massachusetts and around the country who believe in a bolder vision of the future that's fairer, that's better than what we have today, that believes in helping bring people up in the world, that can advocate for policies that really make that kind of a difference. We need leaders that will go and stand for that, not just to stand there and say, look, this is really bad. It is really bad. It is really bad. But let's take all the energy of people. You know, this week there's another Women's Day earlier this week to have people get out there and to really stand up for what's right. Well, we've got to take that energy and channel it into getting new people elected, to representing what voters really want.
Now, I know you didn't commit to anything in the interview, but I'm going to ask you here, now that I've got you here. Does this mean that we may be seeing an Evan Falchuk candidacy for office in the future? I don't know what that office may be. Maybe you want to give me a scoop? But are you looking that way, or is that far ahead?
Maybe one day in the future. Right? What I'm really focused on right now is trying to build what I just said. Let's create a way to get lots and lots of new people involved, lots of people to see politics as an honorable, viable way to make a difference.
All right, so speaking to that point, United Independent Party, the followers that you had, talk to me, who are those folks? I mean, you got to know them well.
Yeah, really interesting people, really wonderful people that want to be involved in politics and didn't feel as if the old parties really represented what they wanted. Well, part of what I've conveyed to them is everything we talked about today, which is you got to stay involved. You got to take that energy you have and let's channel it into the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders is doing some of this as well, saying to his followers and to the people that believe in his cause, let's do it this way. I think we need to do the same thing. We have such an opportunity right now with the crisis that we're facing in our country to get so many people involved in politics who otherwise wouldn't have paid attention to it. And I think that the UIP members around Massachusetts who already shown that they've done that, they're going to be part of that vanguard going forward.
Now, just before we close off, we've got very little time. I want to give folks a little treat. They don't know that you speak Spanish so well. You and I know. Tell me a little bit, ¿cómo aprendiste el español? How did you learn Spanish?
En mi casa, por mi padre, who grew up in Venezuela. And I spent a lot of time down there with friends and family. For many years in my business, Best Doctors, we did a lot of business throughout Latin America, and I just count so many friends and family in that part of the world. And it's a real gift.
You speak it better than a lot of my Latino friends. Well, I'm not going to say which ones, though. All right, my friend. Thank you
Alberto,
for stopping by. This was a pleasure, a treat. Maybe we'll get you for another roundtable discussion on politics. All right, that was Evan Falchuk. Stay right there, Evan, because up next, a nonprofit publisher of Braille products awards, get this, $20,000 worth of prize money to the developer of a groundbreaking educational software for the blind and visually impaired. You'll find out who that organization was, who the winner was, and all the details coming up right here on Urban Update.